Over the last 20 to 30 years, there have been many occasions in which it became quite popular and in vogue to disassociate yourself from the England men's national football team, and, in some cases, to go around proudly declaring to people that you had done so. Phrases such as club over country and, oh no, I only support X, Y or Z being club sides there, became increasingly common. And sometimes you would even find an English football fan who proclaimed to support a national team other than England despite having no discernible connection to the team or country in question, aside from maybe one of their club's players playing for them. The rejection of the England national football team by some people came for a variety of different reasons, whether that be unease with the jingoistic tendencies often associated with England fans, a distinct local or regional identity which trumps one's allegiances to the nation and therefore the national team, or oftentimes people just wanting to seem different or interesting. No doubt keeping up this rejection of all things three lines related was made much easier for these people due to England's repeated failures at major tournaments. Given the population of England, its location, tradition, and love of the game, the three lines have been remarkably unsuccessful compared to our German, French, and Italian cousins. Just one World Cup, over 50 years ago, and on home soil, and not a single major final, let alone trophy, in the many years since, has made England something of a laughingstock among major footballing nations. But it appears as though the tide may finally be starting to turn. In 2018, England reached the World Cup semi-finals for the first time since 1990, and for only the second time since 1966. And this year, just 3 years later, the three lines have reached the final of the UEFA European Championship for the first time ever. Gareth Southgate is the first England manager to reach successive major tournament semi-finals since Alf Ramsey at Euro 68. And England are the only team in world football to have reached the semi-finals of both the last World Cup and of either the current or most recent major confederation tournament. It's often said that it is easier to support a winning team, and undoubtedly that is true. But I think there are some other key factors, along with their relative success, that make this England team so lovable and such a joy to support. I am well aware, of course, that some of you who are watching this video won't be English and probably don't have much love for the England team at all. And why would you? So, I am talking primarily in terms of England fans, though there may also be reasons why, as a neutral, perhaps there are teams more worthy of your ire and scorn than the current England squad. The first tournament I watched, or at least the first that I can remember watching, was the 2002 World Cup in South Korea and Japan, which was really the beginning of what Adam Crozier at the FA termed England's golden generation. Much is made of the so-called golden generation, and if you're interested in my views on that team and cultural phenomenon, along with why they didn't win anything, I have made a separate video all about that. So feel free to go and give that video a watch at the end of this one if that sounds like it might be of interest to you. But in the context of today's video, I'm interested in that team that I grew up supporting primarily in terms of the key differences between them and the current team, and there, I think there are some major distinctions that are worth exploring. The first of these is to do with struggle, which, without getting too philosophical, is surely key to character building and player development. Friedrich Nietzsche famously wrote in Twilight of the Idols that "Was mich nicht umbringt, macht mich stärker," which is German for "what does not kill me makes me stronger," a sentiment which was later echoed by the successful 2002 American Idol contestant and also renowned thinker Kelly Clarkson in her 2012 smash hit Stronger, brackets, what doesn't kill you, close brackets. Almost everywhere you look in this current England team, you will find struggles, setbacks, and times in their careers where the idea of them ever reaching the final of a major tournament with England would have appeared to be absurd. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that any previous generation of England players didn't have struggles, setbacks, criticisms, and so on and so forth. That would be absurd. But in terms of England's supposed golden generation, there was certainly a perception that they were half celebrities, half footballers, and, however unfairly, many of them didn't seem particularly relatable. David Beckham, for example, had numerous setbacks throughout the course of his career, and received some absolutely horrific abuse and demonisation within the English press following his red card at the 1998 World Cup. That must, of course, have been very difficult for him, and he has said as much in a number of interviews over the years. So, I don't wish to downplay the life experiences of England's former footballers. However, in a solely footballing context, Beckham seemed destined to play football at the very highest level for a very long time, and even when he was being heavily criticised, few people felt he wasn't good enough to play for England. The same goes for the likes of Wayne Rooney, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, and Ashley Cole. Whatever was being said about them, from the age of probably 18 at the earliest and 21 at the latest, it was evident that they were very good footballers, and their career trajectories for the next decade reflected that fact. That isn't the case with England's current crop of players. Just go through them from 1 to 11. In goal, Jordan Pickford has made plenty of high-profile errors at Everton, with suggestions at one time that the Toffees would have to replace him, and repeated calls for him to be dropped by England. I myself, I must admit, thought that Nick Pope probably deserved to be England's number 1 before he suffered an injury which ruled him out of the Euros. But through it all, Gareth Southgate has stuck by Pickford, and in return, Pickford has never really let him down. Across the back four, John Stones was totally out of favour with both England and Manchester City just 2 years ago, and as recently as 12 months ago, many people felt the arrival of Ruben Dias would seal his fate at the Etihad, with reports that Tottenham had a loan offer for Stones accepted with a view to a permanent deal worth just £20 million, only for the player to turn them down. There was a common consensus that his signing by Manchester City for £50 million had been a waste of money, and that Stones was simply too error-prone to ever establish himself at the very highest level. Over the past season, Stones has proved absolutely everyone wrong, including both myself and Pep Guardiola, two of the finest minds in all of world football. He has been one of the best centre-backs in England this season, and he's taken that form with him into Euro 2020. His centre-back partner, Harry Maguire, was a 4th or 5th choice centre-back at Hull City just 5 or 6 years ago, behind the likes of James Chester, Curtis Davis, Alex Bruce, and Michael Dawson. He only really started to flourish in East Yorkshire following Marco Silva's appointment, earning himself a move to Leicester City, and then just 2 seasons later, he was the most expensive defender in world football. His teammate, at both club and international level, Luke Shaw, did look destined for greatness at a very early age, before suffering a horrific double-leg fracture in 2015. Shaw's time at Manchester United appeared to be up on so many occasions, and his relationship with Jose Mourinho was the only thing that was actually more fractured than his leg was in 2015. When Ole Gunnar Solskjaer brought Alex Telles to Old Trafford, a very capable fullback in his own right, again, many felt Shaw's time at Old Trafford was up, and then he goes and puts in a season like the one he just had, being arguably the best left-back in the Premier League and one of the stars of Euro 2020 for England. In midfield, there were a number of Leeds fans before Marcelo Bielsa's arrival who thought that Calvin Phillips wasn't up to the job, and that he should be sold. England's star man in so many respects, Harry Kane, didn't look up to much during loan spells with Leyton Orient, Millwall, Norwich City and Leicester City in 3 separate tiers of the English Football League period. Only a dearth of attacking talent at White Hart Lane, courtesy of the misfiring Emmanuel Adebayor and Roberto Soldado, saw Kane handed an opportunity in the first team, and he grabbed it with both hands, scoring 31 goals in his breakout campaign. Even then, he was branded as a one-season wonder and put on corners at Euro 2016. Kane is now a 7-season wonder, and you wouldn't bet against him having another 7, still aged only 27. Of England's starting 11 against Denmark, there's only really Kyle Walker, Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Mason Mount and Raheem Sterling who have enjoyed fairly linear career trajectories, particularly because Rice, Saka and Mount are still so young. Meanwhile, Sterling may have always looked to be improving and impressing if you looked at his performances in a vacuum, but in a wider context, he has overcome tremendous hurdles in the face of the most constant and vitriolic barrage of attacks of any of this current England squad. And that is just England's most recent starting 11. If you look at the whole squad, you've got Tyrone Mings, who couldn't get a game for Bournemouth a few years ago before going on loan to Villa in the Championship, Conor Cody, who took 5 years to return to the Premier League following a solitary appearance for Liverpool in 2012-13, Jack Grealish, who has always had tremendous ability but looked as though he may waste it all on a number of occasions before being appointed Villa's club captain by Dean Smith, and even someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who, until Carlo Ancelotti arrived at Everton, and he began working more closely with Duncan Ferguson, looked like he was never going to be capable of leading the line for a team with top half aspirations, let alone top 6 aspirations in the Premier League. Calvert-Lewin scored 21 goals last season, and he bagged 4 in his first 7 or maybe 8 caps for England, most of which came off the bench. So, this England team is full of players who have been written off and then written off again, players who, in many cases, honed their skills in the EFL, in League One and the Championship in particular, and players who know that the opportunities they are currently enjoying could be taken from them at any moment if they don't give their all in every game and every training session. So they are relatable in that sense because, like most people, their lives have not been straightforward or simple, but also in a personal sense. Harry Maguire turning up to his first England camp with his clothes in a bin bag was iconic, and it is difficult to imagine a Beckham, Cole, Lampard or David James ever turning up to an England camp with a bin bag. And Maguire has been a pretty beloved member of the England squad, absolutely adored by supporters, pretty much ever since. I mean, it's not just because of the bin bag, obviously. There was also that funny meme and the fact that he's brilliant, but you get the idea. Though this England team earned vast sums of money, even more than the previous generation on average, they seem very humble, very level-headed, and just like thoroughly decent human beings. Most come from council estates or working-class backgrounds, and they haven't forgotten where they came from. Marcus Rashford grew up requiring free school meals, and the importance of them, and the challenges that his mum faced, have stuck with him, even now that neither he nor any of his family will ever have to face any of those kinds of concerns again. Raheem Sterling, who moved from Kingston, Jamaica, to London at the age of 5, with his mum working extra hours cleaning toilets to support him, now helps to fund disadvantaged and less affluent young people get university degrees and job opportunities. Again, in spite of the fact that his own children will receive all the opportunities in the world due to the wealth that he has acquired through his ability on a football pitch. This speaks to another unique aspect of this England squad in the context of at least the last 70 or 80 years of English football. They feel confident and emboldened enough to speak up about issues that they care about, and to champion causes that matter to them. Marcus Rashford has, quite literally, challenged the government and won on multiple occasions, and has been successful in forcing U-turns over whether the state should provide meals to impoverished children outside of term time. That's not normal. Or at least, that wasn't normal, but now it is. To be clear, the actual Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was compelled to shift government policy due to the campaigning of a 23-year-old Premier League footballer. And through the charity Fair Share, Rashford raised more than £20 million, providing more than 21 million meals for children and families who otherwise might not have been able to afford them. Raheem Sterling took on the establishment media in this country through the use of his profile and large social media following, prompting a conversation surrounding the reporting of people of colour in England that went way beyond the world of football alone. And Jordan Henderson, Liverpool's captain and England's vice-captain, has repeatedly spoken out on issues surrounding LGBT rights, as well as helping to raise £4 million for the NHS through the Players Together initiative. Now, you may think that that is all a load of old woke nonsense and virtue signalling, though the millions of children who benefit from free school meals and NHS nurses may disagree, but whatever your views on English footballers' various causes and passions, no one can deny that it is a major departure from the past. David Beckham, who I absolutely loved as a child growing up, so this isn't me taking a pop at him, would not, I don't believe, ever have challenged the government in the way that Marcus Rashford has done. I'm not sure the people around him would have allowed him to, even if he had wanted to. It would have been considered too reckless from a commercial perspective. As Michael Jordan famously said when asked to endorse a Democratic candidate in the North Carolina Senate race, Republicans buy sneakers too. Well, the same goes in the United Kingdom. When you take any kind of stance on any kind of issue, regardless of how obviously moral or just it may seem to you or I, you open yourself up to significant backlash. as evidenced by the fact that Marcus Rashford receives by far the most online abuse and trolling of any player in the Premier League. Has that tamed him or made him any less likely to stand up for disadvantaged kids in the UK? Not in the slightest. These England players, or at least a large number of them, aren't afraid to put their heads above the parapet, whether that's on issues surrounding racism, human rights, and even, God forbid, maybe even politics. No doubt they will still sometimes be advised to do otherwise by agents and other people around them, but they have taken increased agency over their own lives. Of course, part of that might just be because their generation, younger millennials through to Gen Zers, tend to be more radical and passionate about these kinds of issues than the generation that preceded them. But I think the biggest factor is the bravery to come out and say what they believe, regardless of both the known and unknown consequences. In large part, it seems likely that their confidence to do so, if not having come directly from, has certainly been allowed to flourish thanks to the national team boss, Gareth Southgate, who has defended his players in light of whatever backlash they have received from the media and fans at every turn. It would have been very easy for Gareth Southgate to buckle and just say something along the lines of, "It's up to the players," and abdicate any sense of genuine leadership that is incumbent upon him. In fact, that is exactly what I think just about every England manager during my lifetime before him would have done. But Southgate has conducted himself with sheer class and distinction during the entirety of his England managerial reign. His open letter to England fans struck a chord with young and old, left and right, wokerati and anti-woke warriors alike. Southgate is as popular with Labour voters as he is with Conservative voters, according to polling, with a higher popularity rating than just about anyone in England outside of David Attenborough, and that includes Winston Churchill. When it comes to football, which is also a rather significant part of his remit, Southgate is brave there as well. As he said following England's 2-0 win against Germany, had his switch to a 3 at the back, with no Sancho, Foden or Grealish gone wrong, he would have been absolutely battered. Once again, against Denmark, had England conceded in extra time, his decision to substitute Jack Grealish, after bringing him on quite late in the game, would have been all anyone focused on. So, he makes brave calls when he thinks they are right for the team, and he keeps on getting vindicated. This is completely at odds with many former England bosses. I remember watching an interview with Sven-Göran Eriksson where he was asked whether he thought he could have dropped one or even two of David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard in order to play a 3 in midfield with someone sitting, freeing up the other 2 to push on like they did at club level and attack. Or whether he might even have dropped either Wayne Rooney or Michael Owen to free up a midfield sitter like Owen Hargreaves or Michael Carrick. Sven's response? He said, "Imagine if I dropped one of those players and lost, the press would have slaughtered me." He lived in fear of the press and of supporters. His first thought wasn't, what is the best decision to try and win this game of football? It was, how can I win this game of football but avoid getting pelters if I don't win it at the same time? As soon as that thought process enters your mind, it's game over really. And Gareth Southgate is getting to the point where even when he makes unpopular decisions, most people have the belief and confidence in him to keep faith in the process, whatever he is trying to achieve. Before I leave you and we all get excited about this evening's game, I want to end by saying that there were an awful lot of people who said that if England players took a knee, fans would turn on them and they'd go out in the group stage or in their first knockout tie. There were members of Parliament who said they wouldn't watch or support England at this World Cup due to what the England players and manager have always made absolutely clear is a purely anti-racist stance, and not a political one. There are many who claim to be great patriots and fervent nationalists who are willing England to fail at this European Championship, and they have already achieved their greatest ever success in this competition. So, is all I will say to those people. I've loved a lot of this squad and the manager for some time, but that grows all the time, along with their confidence and the quality of their performances. This England team is a joy to watch, and seeing Mason Mount give his shirt to that young girl in the crowd on Wednesday seemed to encapsulate the decency, kindness and warmness of this England team, and the happiness that they are able to bring to a deeply fractured nation. I don't expect other nations to cheer England on, I mean, why would they? But I do know Irish and Scottish friends who begrudgingly admit that they quite like a lot of the England team, because they are very good footballers and even better people. So there is my soppy England video in the build-up to tonight's final. And whilst I won't be as sentimental as to say that they are already winners in my eyes, I think it is fair to say that not many people expected England's footballers to reach a semi-final and a final in the next two tournaments after they lost to Iceland at Euro 2016, or to make the government change course on feeding hungry children. So, in that sense, they are certainly great overachievers, whether they emerge victorious this evening or not. That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram, or indeed both, via the username at HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so. Come on, England.